Having an effective budget is critical to keeping your finances on track and your money where you want it. However, sometimes when setting up our budget, there is a tendency to leave out some expenses that we don't think of right away. Failing to budget for all expenses can throw your budget off, ruin your budget, and leave you with a feeling of failure. Budgets tend to fail for two reasons. They are either not planned well enough or they are not being used. If you do everything in your power to put your budget to work and it is still failing every month, then the problem lies in the planning process. In order to remember all the expenses you have and need to include in your budget, it is important to look ahead and map out any and all of these expenses that is often overlooked. This is how you will guarantee that your budget will be safe from overspending and keep you from reaching for your emergency fund to make it through the month. The best way to figure out all your expenses, within reason of course, is to look back at the prior year of spending and figure out which areas that you have been overspending. While this might sound like a ridiculous long amount of time and spending to be analyzing, it will give you the most comprehensive idea of your spending. Looking back this far will help you remember the odd expenses that only happen once in a year and ensure that you are adding up everything to the best of your knowledge. After all, we cannot plan for everything that will happen within the coming year, which is why it is important to have an emergency fund handy. Once you have a good idea of your future expenses, you need to set them up budget style for at least the next 2 to 3 months to guarantee that you plan and allocate money to cover these expenses well in advance. To help you save time and give you an idea of some of the expenses that you might not be budgeting for, I have put together a list of 10 expenses that I think you might not be budgeting for, but you should for this year. If you are interested in finding out these often forgotten budget categories, then keep watching. Number 1 is savings. The very first expense you should be putting money aside for every month is your savings. You need to focus on paying yourself first before paying everybody else, because this is very important for your financial freedom. You need to set aside money strictly for savings, else you might never actually save. Trust me, I have tried and failed miserably in the past doing this. Budgeting for saving is more important than any other expenses in your budget. It is more important than shopping, Netflix, or even going out. Your savings is your security, your future, and your key to getting out of debt. Here are some common saving categories that you can actually allocate this money to if you manage to save. Firstly, emergency fund, or you can put it towards your financial goals, be it vacation or saving up to buy a house. Thirdly, it can go towards sinking funds for holidays or buying yourself or your family some gifts. You can also put it towards your retirement, or even for some other large purchases like buying a laptop, a new car, or even a house. In order to maximize your savings and guarantee that you actually save every month, I will advise that you set up an automatic transfer with your bank, or have a portion of your paycheck deposited directly into your savings account. You can have a conversation with your HR department to have this done. Number 2 is quarterly and annual bills. It is easy to miss one of these bills because they are not irregular on the monthly schedule. In order to make sure that you always have money to cover these bills, you will need to set aside a portion of the payment amount every month towards paying these bills annually or quarterly. To determine the amount you need to budget for quarterly or annually, you will need to track your expenses for the prior year, total them and divide by 12, and multiply the amounts by the number of months in between payments. For quarterly, it will be 3. For annually, it will be 12. Then each month, set aside this amount that you've calculated towards covering this bill quarterly or annually when they come around. Some quarterly and annually bills that you will need to keep an eye out for include rent advance and utility bill, especially when you live in Ghana. Property taxes, that's if you own a house or other properties that will incur taxes throughout the year. School fees, that's if the fees are paid by the semester or bi-yearly or even annually. Self-employment tax, that's if you are self-employed. Third expense that you should be budgeting for include subscriptions and memberships. You can budget for these expenses the same way you budget for your quarterly or annual expenses. Track the total cost of the expense and divide by 12. Then set aside that amount every month to cover these expenses when they come around, so that you wouldn't have to be scrambling around for money when they are due. Here are some subscriptions and membership expenses that are often overlooked when it comes to budgeting. You have magazine fees, gym fees, professional subscription fees, that's if you belong to a professional organization, internet services, that's if you are on annual contract or you have an agreement with your service provider to pay on a different schedule. Number 4 is special occasions, holidays and gifts. Luckily, these expenses happen the same time in the year, so you can easily add them to your budget. The key is to remember to budget for them. The easiest way to save up for these recurring expenses is to use a sinking fund, and we will talk about it in subsequent videos. If you are unfamiliar with sinking funds, it is basically setting aside money at the end of every month over a period of time before you actually spend it. For example, after Christmas, I like to look back at the total amount that I've spent over the Christmas season. Then I'll start saving over the next couple of months towards the coming Christmas, so that I'll not be found wanting when it's due and I need to buy gifts for family and friends. By saving up for this way, I only have to set aside money every month towards these particular expenses, and would they have to now end up spending a full Christmas paycheck covering these expenses when it's time, or having to dip into my non-holiday savings later in the year. I also guarantee that I wouldn't have to reach for my credit card or borrow to cover these expenses, because I already have money set aside to cover it when it's time. Create a sinking fund for each occasion that you can think of. That way you have money available to cover them when it's time for those family dinners, vacations, holidays, or birthday parties. Ideas for these expenses and sinking funds to create include birthday parties, holidays, anniversaries, and other special occasions that you would like to celebrate. Number 5 is budgeting for fun. When living on a budget, one of the most important things that you will need to budget for is fun. You absolutely need to treat yourself once in a while, and by budgeting for it, you can relieve yourself the guilt and the remorse that you feel after spending so much on yourself when you know you have not budgeted for it. Budgeting for fun is absolutely necessary to keep your spirits up on this journey to financial freedom. Not budgeting for fun can make your budget suffocating, and it will eventually lead you to go on a spending spree just to make up for it. Instead, when you include fun in your budget, grabbing your favorite drink will feel amazing instead of making you feel guilty. Trust me, coffee tastes way better when you budget for it. Fun money in your budget is money you can spend on whatever you want. You'll be amazed how easy it is to live on a budget when you are preparing for these expenses. Fun money can be spent on anything you want, but if you need some ideas, here you go. You can spend it on fancy coffee, lunch at work, shoes, books, literally anything that you enjoy that you can afford. Number 6, budget for going out with friends. Just like budgeting for fun, so is budgeting for going out with friends. This will help you enjoy life on a budget by being able to go out and spend money that you've already set aside for a specific purpose. This category can include the following and any other thing else that might fit into your lifestyle. No rules here, except that this money is within reason when it comes to your budget. They include eating out at your favorite restaurants, going for concerts, going for movies, or even having drinks on a Friday night. Number 7 is budgeting for clothing. If you're a big shopper or just love going out to get new clothing or shoes, then it is important to allow yourself a stipend every month for shopping. You can either use up your budgeted amount every month or use it to save up for more expensive items that might not fit into your monthly budget, like high-end coats, bags, or boots. I am all about saving money on stuff, but I believe in quality over quantity, especially when it comes to clothing and footwear. Number 8, budget for travel. You absolutely need to be including the cost of your daily travels in your budget, be it gas for your car, your metro pass, bus tickets, Uber, or even taxi. You also need to budget for vacation travel expenses like flights, hotel accommodation, food, and entertainment. It may seem silly budgeting for your vacation, but you should strive to pay for your vacations with cash to prevent you from being in debt. What's the best way to budget for a vacation? I advise that you plan out your vacation, come up with a reasonable cost for all expenses, then set a date for when you would like to take that vacation. Once you have all this figured out, I advise that now you add up the total cost and divide by the number of months that's left for you to start booking that vacation. Then you can start putting away money monthly towards this particular vacation. It is a strategy to guarantee that you avoid using credit cards when planning your vacations. Number 9 expense that you should budget for is budget for your pets. You absolutely cannot forget to budget for your pets' expenses. Their cost of living is as important as yours. Here are some pet expenses that you can budget for to make it easier. You can budget for their grooming or vaccine, or their food and annual checkups. Also their treats and some toys that they will play with. And don't forget other pampering or spoiling. Their expenses tend to be impulse buying, so it's advisable to stay on the safe side and make sure you have money set aside towards these expenses. The 10th expenses that you should be budgeting for is home and car maintenance. Last and certainly not the least is budgeting for your home and car maintenance. While these expenses might not happen on a regular basis, it is advisable that you budget for them on a monthly basis, just in case something major happens down the road. The best way to get this done is to set aside money at the end of every month, or set aside a percentage of your paycheck towards these expenses in a separate savings account. This will be an emergency fund, but literally just for your home and car maintenance. My final word here is it is incredibly important to budget for every single expenses in our lives. If we do not, our budgets will not be as effective as we want them to be in order for us to reach our financial success and financial goals. To recap, here are 10 expenses that you are not budgeting for in 2022 that you should be. 1 is savings. 2 is quarterly and annual bills. 3 is subscriptions and memberships. 4 is special occasions, holidays, and gifts. 5 is fun. 6 is going out with friends. 7 is clothes. 8 is travel. 9 is pets. 10 is home and car maintenance. If you've gotten value out of this video, kindly hit the subscribe button to join me on this journey to financial freedom. Thank you.